Hi, everybody. It's Lynn Louise Wonders. I'm here with Cary Hamilton, who is out in Washington State, and she is going to talk to us a little bit today about this transition to telehealth, specifically for child therapists who are used to providing play therapy services in person. And this has been a little bit of a challenge for some of our colleagues. Some people are finding it, to be really simple and easy. And I know that you have a lot of supervisees and a lot of students that you've trained and that you're training, and then you have your own staff and you have your own client caseload. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit from your experience about this transition and any tips or suggestions that you might have.
Yeah, those are lots of questions all at once. Yeah, it's been a significant transition, right? Like making the decision to go telehealth, making sure you're trained before you went onto the telehealth platform, trying to figure out how to do play. And one of the biggest things that I tried to have everyone focus on is the first few weeks, and even now, because everybody's kind of in this trauma place, right, is to focus on relationship. Like, don't worry about treatment plans. Don't worry about what you were working on before this happened, before now. It's solely about how can you maintain relationship? How can you redevelop rapport on this platform? How can you make sure you're being with your client wherever they're at, and making it more about relationship and regulation, and that really being the sole goal of your initial sessions for a while, is just to have that reconnection happen. Because I felt like well, no, a lot of my supervisors were telling me, like, well, we need to do this, this, and this, or I need to work on this skill, or I can't do CCPT exactly how we were doing it before, and them getting stuck in their own frame of reference, right? But I can't do it like we were doing it before, and because of their own elevated responses, them then not being able to think through what do they need to do next, right? And how does that play out when it comes to what's the next? So reorienting everybody back to, it's about relationship and it's about regulation, and taking the time to get to know the client in that new space. Like, they came into the playroom and it was this new space for them to be, right? Well, now we get to see what their space is like. So we're getting to enter their play space that is their norm, right? Their bedrooms. I see people saying, like, I've never seen so many dogs or favorite toys or cats. Like, you get to see all this awesome space that's their space that they get to invite you into. And there's nothing more rewarding in developing a relationship than them get to do that. So it's kind of that inverse role, and really taking advantage of that and making sure that that's the perspective that clinicians have going into that dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And then, so not only doing that of switching gears and saying, hey, I need to figure out how to somehow do different, but recognizing that the caseload that you were doing before, right? Like being in session, regulating, helping to regulate clients, being present with them, energy is completely different. You're not able to do that on this. And we've heard that through all of the Facebook groups and in my supervision groups. Being able to be present is harder in this two-dimensional space. And that is just so much more draining. And so one of the really important factors that I've been telling my supervisees and even my clinicians in clinic, I had to almost forcibly rein them back and say, you can't do 7 telehealth play therapy sessions in a row. Like, that is not a feasible option for you to do. You may have been able to do 6 or 7 in clinic, but you should not be doing more than 4 to 5 on a daily basis, because it's just too draining. You're not able to be present with those end of day clients like you are at beginning of clients, right? And that's, I think, been a very hard shift for people, is because we're all worried about money as well. I think that's been the biggest factor for my supervisees and my clinicians. Like, well, we still have to make money. I'm like, yes, and are you doing it going to do harm if at the end of the day you're not able to be present, you're not able to regulate that client like you did at the beginning of the day? That's not an okay scenario to be happening, right? And I think that's been a hard shift for a lot of clinicians, is realizing they can't do as much as they were doing before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a reality that that's difficult for a lot of people to accept. And then there is what I'm hearing is that there are the therapists who are, for a lot of the reasons you've already mentioned, are having trouble transitioning their in-person clients to the online platform, and they're feeling anxiety about loss of income. It's just so many variables that, and so what I'm hearing you talk about, and I've heard others refer to this too in other videos that I've done, is that the flexibility is really important. You didn't say that per se, but I think that's what I hear you saying. Like you have
Mhm.
to be flexible
Mhm.
and not fixed in your idea of what therapy has to look like or feel like or be like, rather kind of go with the flow of this new situation, right?
Yeah, it's challenging them to go back to their initial training of you can't plan for what's going to come into the room. You got to go with what's coming into the room, right? And
Yeah.
having a bigger mindset of that, of
I'm
being,
noticing that a lot of therapists seem to feel, and I think this is natural, um, being thrown into this very unfamiliar situation. I think there's a natural tendency to want to control it and to go in like you're kind of
totally.
with a very rigid agenda.
Mhm.
And while there's definitely something that can be comforting about having some structure for sure,
Mhm.
and this does sometimes need to be a little bit more um, structured, only because we have this technological platform that we have to kind of work within. It's almost like you're suggesting that we need to remain flexible within that structure.
Yeah,
Because if we
totally.
are structured and rigid, we're
Yeah.
probably going to set ourselves up for anxiety for ourselves and maybe even for our clients.
Oh, I think that's definitely true. I think, and even I've experienced this few times with my clients, is the concept of instead of walking them out to the waiting room to turn it off, right? We just click a button and they're gone. That's a very disorienting disconnection that I
Yeah.
think a lot of people haven't been paying attention to. It's like when we disconnect, we say goodbye, but instead of having the natural movement of moving them out of the room and having that closure, making eye contact with a parent maybe, and saying, giving a high five to the child, we all of a sudden just click a button and they're gone. So we aren't even getting that closure as much as they're getting that closure,
That's
right? Is
a
that
really great
movement
point.
forward.
I hadn't even
And I
thought of
think that, yeah, and that's where I started to feel like it's that disconnection of the awkwardness of saying goodbye on a phone or saying goodbye on all of these, video platforms. It's always like, okay, goodbye. And then it takes like several seconds for us to turn everything off, but we're still here, right?
that.
And so that really weird, awkward disconnection is, I think, something that we're all having to work through, but I don't think that we're paying attention to it as far as how our bodies are reading that social dissonance that's happening.
Yeah, that's a really really good point. I wonder if there's anything we could do to help ourselves to feel have some more some. I mean, it'd be different, but some of that sense of closure. I wonder if there's a way to have like a ritual or something with our clients. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think ritualizing it's really important. Whatever you've done, I think out in the when you move them out to the waiting room, you can similarly do here. Is it singing a song? Is just stomping out, right? Is it doing some sort of high five like this, right? And then bumping, and then I click off when I bump, right? So that there's that I'm with you in this disconnection moment. But it takes a little practice to hit the leave meeting and bump and do everything at the same time. But I think singing songs together and still doing all of those things you would normally have been doing,
Hmm.
right? Or let's say elephant noises out, or let's sing a sing song as we go out, right? Like all of those normal regulating things we would do as we move out, we are totally capable of doing. We just don't think to do them because we're focused on the how do I turn this all off and paying attention to our computer, right? So being able to be more sufficient, I guess, efficient at or effective at turning things off, I think is more helpful. But I've done lots of fist bumps to do that. And I actually got that from my son's speech therapist because we started doing this platform too. And so she did a fist bump and my son did a fist bump. I'm like, oh yeah, that's that disconnection piece, right? Of them moving out of that transition space. And so I think we can easily do those things. We're just not thinking about doing them because we're not moving our body, which is our transitional state of, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing now.
Right, right. Wow, that's such a good point. I was just thinking about this little ritual that I have for in my social emotional awareness literacy program for preschoolers. To end the session, we do this little thing. It's like
Yeah.
bye bye butterfly, see you later alligator, and something like that, where it's like you say, ritualizing the ending and the closure for the session. I love
Yeah, I think
that.
that'd be perfect.
Before I let you go, I want to know if you have any recommendations from your experience as to how we can make sure that we're taking care of ourselves in this process, other than your excellent point about not having as many clients as you normally would. Do you have anything else you've discovered that is helpful?
I think, I thought of this when you reached out, and I think one of the biggest things is we're conscious of everybody else's windows of tolerance. And I think we're trying to be conscious of our windows of tolerance, but at the same time, are we paying attention to all of our senses and what we need to do to calm them, right? We kind of, for me, and this is just an example, so we know movement works, the bilateral stimulation, all of those things. When we're out of our window of tolerance, we got to get back in, right? So we get upside down, we do what we need to do. But I think we forget about some of our other senses that are actually more activated. For example, and I thought of this was for me, my ears are hypersensitive.
Mm.
And so, like going home and having the kids play raucously right now just sends me through the roof because it's the one sense that isn't necessarily getting stimulated. And I'm so focused on my other senses to regulate them. I'm not paying attention to that other hypersensitive piece of mine. And so I've had to really work hard to pay attention to my sensitivity with my auditory sense and really work to manage that. So it got me wondering, I'm sure there are other things for other people, whether it's auditory, tactile, something that's not the normal vestibular proprioceptive moving ones that are maybe a little bit more high sensitive. Are you needing to chew gum? Are you needing to do make sure you're putting lotion on regularly so you're getting tactile sensation, right? But for me, it was my ears. And am I paying attention to, am I playing music in my car or am I letting it be quiet as I head home, right? Am I continuing to create the cacophony that distresses me out versus making sure I'm finding space to do that? So it's one of those things that we're always aware of some of our senses, but it's the other senses that are in hyperarousal that we need to be paying attention to as well. And I think that's why we come out so exhausted at the end of the day when we have nothing left. Those little things that trigger us are probably coming from those senses that we're not regulating on a regular basis.
Interesting. Okay, I
Yeah.
haven't really thought about that. I think intuitively, I've been stepping outside and purposely listening for the sound of the wind in the trees and the sound of birds. And I've been making sure I go for a walk, not only to move my body, but to feel the sun on my face and all of those things. I didn't really think of it as in terms of what you're talking about. Also, I've noticed that I'm really craving putting in my earbuds and listening to really relaxing music or some WSB, some classical music that soothes my soul.
Yeah.
Through sound. So people need to maybe take a break between sessions and pay attention to what it is that they need, whether it's visual, whether it's hearing, whether, like you said, it's a tactile, soothing
Yeah, like
something.
someone was saying the other day, my eyes feel like I'm going crazy, even though the screen's not moving, but my eyes, I'm like, yeah, because you're focused in 13 inches away, right? What are you doing to make sure in session you can tell your clients, for a second, I'm going to be looking at the walls I talk to because my eyes need to relax a little bit, right? Or let's do this together because they're having the same struggle too. So it's making sure you're looking at all 8 of your senses and not just the ones that we use most often when we're in the playroom. And you'll notice that those are the ones that are probably setting you off, that creates that irritability in you. Those are the senses you need to be paying attention to a little bit
So
more.
you're one of my go-tos in terms of sensory integration, neuroscience, all of that good stuff that we all need to be really, really paying attention to right now more than ever.
Yes.
And you do offer consultation for therapists, supervision, but also just a consultation on a particular topic.
Yes.
So I will be including your contact information and your links below this video for anybody that wants to get in touch with you and just see what your availability, because you might be able to help them brainstorm things they
Mhm.
could use for themselves and for their clients.
Definitely. I'd love to help clients and staff with that.
Thank you so much, Cary. It's so good
Thank
to
you.
connect with you. And you take care of yourself during this time, okay?
You too as well, and take care.